$1 billion fortune, a house built on secrets, and one question that haunts her: what if Tobias Hawthorne wasn't just a stranger? Avery Grambs used to be a nobody. Now, she was the most watched teenager in the world, overnight heiress to the multi-billion-dollar Hawthorne fortune. She'd survived murder attempts, public scrutiny, and an endless maze of riddles left behind by Tobias Hawthorne, an eccentric billionaire who gave her everything. But he hadn't given her answers. Not the most important one. Why her? Why not one of his brilliant, trained grandsons? And now, standing in the echoing halls of Hawthorne House, Avery believed she might finally know, because she might be his granddaughter. The clues had been mounting: a sealed guardianship file naming Avery, a second unsigned will leaving everything to Tobias Hawthorne, a son erased from public memory, and a string of puzzles and letters suggesting Avery's mother had known Tobias personally. Now, Avery was on a mission: find out who Tobias Hawthorne too was, and find out if she was his blood, if she was a Hawthorne not just by inheritance, but by birth. But answers came slow in Hawthorne House, because Tobias never left a truth that wasn't buried in games. While the media obsessed over her every move and Hawthorne House buzzed with hidden rivalries, Avery kept returning to a place she once thought was meaningless: a park bench, where a homeless man named Harry used to sit, offering cryptic advice. Chess games, silence. Harry, who had known her since childhood. Harry, who had disappeared after she inherited everything. But when Avery dug deeper, Harry's background didn't match. No records, no real identity. And slowly, she began to wonder, was Harry just a homeless man? Or was he Tobias Hawthorne too? The Hawthorne boys were still circling her. Jameson, reckless and bright-eyed, made her heart race. He loved the game and maybe her. Grayson, controlled and intense, tried to push her away, but always came back. He didn't want her hurt. Or maybe he didn't want to care. Their rivalry ran deep back to Emily Lachlan, the girl who had loved them both and died in the crossfire. Avery didn't want to be another ghost between them, but she couldn't help how her pulse jumped around Jameson, or how steady Grayson's voice made her feel when the world spun out. Following a lead from Tobias's riddles, Avery and Jameson found a fireproof chamber sealed beneath the east wing. Inside, they discovered old documents, handwritten notes, and a wall full of photographs. One of them made Avery freeze. Her mother as a teenager, standing beside a boy who looked just like the Hawthorne grandsons. The name written on the back: Tobias Hawthorne. The photo unlocked a devastating secret. Tobias Hawthorne hadn't disappeared peacefully. He was presumed dead, killed in a tragic fire years ago. A boating accident. No body ever recovered. The official story said he'd been wild, reckless, a liability to the Hawthorne name. But Tobias Hawthorne Seoster never stopped searching. His notes found in the fireproof room chronicled a desperate attempt to find his son. He believed Toby was alive, and Avery was beginning to think so too. More clues. More whispers from the past. Avery uncovered letters sent to Tobias Hawthorne Seoster from a girl named Hannah. They were dated after Toby's supposed death. The letters begged Tobias to look into a group home called Drawn Mills, where kids had been abused. Hannah wrote of a boy quiet, brilliant, broken who had been there too, a boy with gray eyes, Avery's eyes. Was Toby in that group home? And if so, had he fathered a child there? There was only one way to know for sure. Avery secretly had her DNA tested against the Hawthorne boys. If she was their cousin, the test would prove it. If not, then maybe this was all another misdirection in Tobias's twisted legacy. But there was a problem. The results were inconclusive, too diluted, too many secrets. Still, one thing was becoming certain. Tobias Hawthorne had loved Toby, and everything he'd built, every clue, every twist seemed aimed at one goal: to bring his lost son home. Amid the search for answers, someone else was moving pieces on the board. Avery began receiving anonymous threats again, but this time, they were different, less public, more intimate. Someone was watching her closely. Someone inside Hawthorne House. She thought of Sky Jameson's manipulative mother, of Zara stern and cold, of Rebecca Lachlan, Emily's quiet sister, whose eyes always tracked her movements. But the truth was more dangerous than she guessed, because the enemy wasn't just angry about the will. They wanted to bury the legacy, and bury her with it. Avery found herself pulled into Rebecca Lachlan's world. The red-haired girl was grieving, gentle, and harder to read than she looked. She spoke rarely about Emily, but one night, During a rainstorm, she confessed, Emily's death wasn't an accident. She had been warned not to toy with the Hawthorne boys, and someone might have pushed her over the edge. But who? Grayson? Jameson? Toby? Or someone who had stayed silent all along? The past was calling. Avery and Jameson traced Tobias Hawthorne's trail to Drawn Mills, the now abandoned group home mentioned in Hannah's letters. The place was falling apart, graffiti, dust, silence. But something about it felt alive. They explored the crumbling halls and found a room covered in numbers written over and over, in strange patterns. Jameson noticed something familiar. They weren't just numbers. They were part of a cipher one used in Hawthorne House, a code Tobias used when he was training his grandsons. Toby had been there, and he had left a message. Back at the estate, Avery confronted Elisa, her legal guardian, and the Hawthorne family's lawyer. She needed real answers. Elisa hesitated, then admitted it. Toby Hawthorne hadn't died. He'd survived the accident. He'd faked his death. Tobias Hawthorne helped cover it up, cutting off his own son, hiding the truth to protect his family name. The guilt had consumed him. That's why Tobias left Avery the fortune. To bring his son's legacy back into the light. To bring Toby home. And Avery? She was most likely Toby's daughter. Hidden in Tobias's papers was another revelation. The original will naming Toby as heir had been replaced when Toby vanished. But Tobias never stopped planning for his return. He built layers into the will Avery received, not just money, but challenges, not just property, but control. She could not give the Hawthornes anything, not the house, not the foundation, not a cent, unless she gave it to Toby. Jameson tracked down a lead. In the beach town of Thea, a man had been seen living off the grid. He walked with a limp, never gave his name. Locals called him Thea's ghost. They went looking and found a man on the beach, watching the waves. A man who looked like the Hawthorne boys, older, quieter, eyes full of pain. It was Toby. He didn't want to talk, but when Avery showed him the photo of her mother, he froze. He whispered her name and walked away. Avery's bodyguard, Oren, had been patient, loyal, but now he gave her a chilling warning. You're in deeper than you think. You're not the only person looking for Toby, and some of them want him dead. Who and why? Avery was desperate to find him again, but if she brought Toby into the spotlight, it might put him and herself at greater risk. The inheritance was a crown made of barbed wire, and every step she took pulled it tighter. In a rare moment of honesty, Rebecca confessed she had lied. The night Emily died, Rebecca had been there. She'd seen more than she told anyone. Emily had pushed Jameson too far, told Grayson one thing, whispered another in Jameson's ear, played them both. When Jameson realized it, he backed off, but Grayson had followed Emily into the woods, and she never came back out. Rebecca didn't know what happened in those trees, but she saw Grayson return ashen, shaking. She was protecting him. But now, Avery had to ask, was Grayson capable of murder? Through it all, Avery couldn't shake the pull she felt toward Jameson. He was reckless, beautiful, built for adrenaline and mystery, but he also saw her, not just as a piece on the board but as a player. He kissed her, and this time, she kissed him back. They were fire and fuel, the game incarnate. But Avery still had secrets, and Jameson hated secrets, especially the one she was keeping about Toby. Avery started seeing signs, a woman watching from across the street, a strange car following her to school. Someone was stalking her. One day, a note appeared in her locker. He's not who you think he is. Walk away, or I'll bury you with him. She thought it meant Toby, but it could have meant Jameson, or Grayson, or herself. Oren returned with a revised DNA report. He had samples tested again, this time through discreet, private channels. The result? Avery shared enough genetic material with the Hawthornes to suggest a first-degree biological connection. She wasn't just an heir, she was family. He showed up, late at night, in Hawthorne House. He wanted answers too. Why had his father left Avery everything? Why now? Avery didn't know what to say. She looked at him and asked, "Are you my father?" Toby didn't answer. He just said, "I tried to do better than he did, but maybe I failed too." Then he disappeared again. The threat stopped being subtle. Someone broke into Avery's room, not to steal, not to harm, just to leave something. A photograph from Drawn Mills of a group of children. In the corner, Avery's mother, young, frightened, and next to her a boy with hollow eyes. Toby. The message was clear. Someone knew the truth. And they were warning Avery to stop digging, or they'd finish what Tobias started. Avery's investigation into Drawn Mills went deeper. With Oren's help, she uncovered sealed court records and testimony from survivors. It was a nightmare. Drawn Mills had covered up years of abuse, neglect, and worse. Children had died, others vanished. The institution burned down conveniently soon after one of its victims started talking. That victim? Toby. He hadn't just run away, he had tried to expose them, and then he'd disappeared just before he could testify. Toby's file revealed it all. He had planned to go public. He was going to tell the world what had happened at Drawn Mills. He had names, records, dates, but someone intervened. The official story said Toby died in a boating accident, but Avery now believed the fire was set to silence him. The truth would have destroyed Tobias Hawthorne's reputation, tied his family name to one of the worst abuse scandals in state history. So Tobias made a deal: bury the son, protect the legacy. She had admired Tobias Hawthorne despite everything, respected his brilliance. But now, she saw a man who chose power over blood. He'd sacrificed his son to keep the Hawthorne empire pristine. He'd left Avery his fortune not to honor her but to redeem himself. Grayson finally broke, haunted by Emily's death. He confessed what happened in the woods that night. Emily had told him she was choosing him. She'd kissed him, laughed, then turned to leave. Grayson followed her, tried to stop her from going to Jameson. They argued. She screamed. She collapsed, a seizure, and he froze, did nothing. By the time help arrived, she was gone. He didn't kill her, but he'd never forgiven himself for not saving her. Toby returned again, this time with answers. He told Avery the full story. Yes, he had been in Drawn Mills. Yes, he had planned to blow the whistle. Yes, Tobias offered him a way out if he disappeared. He agreed, but not because he was weak, because he was ashamed of what happened, of what he'd let happen, of the lives lost. And in that deal, he walked away from his own daughter, Avery. Avery confronted him. You left me. Toby's reply cut deep. I didn't know. Not until later. Not until it was too late. He had seen her from afar, watched her grow up, even sat beside her on that park bench. But he hadn't had the courage to say it. Not then. Not yet. As Avery's world cracked, so did her romance with Jameson. He could feel her pulling away. He tried to reach her, but Avery was changing, becoming colder, sharper, Hawthorne-like. He whispered, "You're not the girl I kissed in that wine cellar." Avery said nothing, because he was right. She wasn't that girl anymore. Zara, Tobias's eldest daughter, made her move. She called a board meeting, argued that Avery was unstable, that her presence in the estate jeopardized the family's legacy. But Avery had studied the terms of the will. She'd learned the language of power, and she made a counterplay. She moved to name Toby as the legal head of the foundation, Tobias's true heir. The board was stunned. Zara's motion failed, and Avery proved herself a force to be reckoned with. In the final safe Avery opened, deep beneath the library floor, she found a sealed envelope marked, "For Avery, when you're ready to know." Inside was a letter, Tobias Hawthorne's last words to her. He wrote, "I failed him. I failed you. But I saw something in you, a spark, a mind, a heart. You were the answer to the riddle I could never solve. The one person who could make the Hawthorne name mean something again, not by blood, but by fire." The shadows that had haunted Avery finally took shape: security footage, voice analysis, and a near-deadly encounter in the wine cellar led Oren to the truth. The stalker wasn't a stranger. It was Sky Hawthorne, Jameson and Nash's mother. She believed Tobias had wronged her sons by leaving everything to Avery. In her mind, Avery was the thief and outsider who had bewitched her boys and stolen their legacy. So she plotted the threats, the photos, the break-ins. Sky wanted Avery gone, and now the whole world would know. After years of silence, guilt, and exile, Toby Hawthorne stood at a crossroads. Avery offered him the keys to the kingdom, literally control of the foundation, access to the fortune. But Toby turned her down. He didn't want the spotlight. He didn't want to wear the crown Tobias built out of guilt. Instead, he said, "You're the legacy, not me." Avery asked if they could be in each other's lives slowly. Toby smiled. "We'll figure it out." The aftermath of Sky's exposure left the Hawthorne brothers shaken. Grayson withdrew. He focused on protecting the family's name, diving into business, burying his emotions. Jameson left on a reckless spree: travel, danger, anything to feel alive. Nash left with Libby, choosing peace over legacy. Xander, as always, tinkered with inventions, jokes hiding his insight. Avery no longer fit neatly into their world. She wasn't the girl they'd tried to outwit. She was the one who'd won, and the game had changed her. With the Hawthorne fortune under her control, Avery began building something new. She restructured the foundation to fund shelters for abused teens. She gave scholarships to kids like her, bright, invisible, barely hanging on. She kept Hawthorne House open but carved a space for herself that was hers alone. She didn't just wear the name, she transformed it. He showed up when she least expected. Late at night, beneath the stars, near the edge of the rooftop garden, he asked her, "Did we ever have a chance? You and me? Outside the game?" Avery looked at him, this boy who made her feel like chaos and freedom at once, and said, "Maybe we still do." But she didn't kiss him. Not yet. Some games, she had learned, were worth playing slowly. One more envelope, tucked inside the lining of Tobias Hawthorne's desk.no code. No trick, just a line, in his unmistakable script: "Look to the stars." That's where it begins. Avery smiled. Of course it wasn't over, because for Tobias Hawthorne, the game was never the end. It was the beginning.